Here's the source of inspiration for the violet painting. This is a photo that I've taken from my garden and just saved it onto the computer, and you can use that photo yourselves as a reference if you don't have violets growing in your garden. So I've got two versions of that. One is a little bit more of a close-up. You could also Google a range of different floral designs, which I've included in the blog post, just in case you wanted to change the colours of your violets as well. It gives you some great ideas. Now, the colours that I'm going to be working with are, it just depends on whether you hand dye your own silk ribbons or you're using satin ribbons, or, it's really your choice. I'm just using a range of variegated hand-dyed silk ribbons, and you can see these ones range in the blues and purples, not really blues, but purpley sort of pinks. I've got some paler ones. And I've also decided to include some creamy goldy coloured ribbons because they also have a bit of pink through them. It probably doesn't come up on the camera too well, but in real life they do have quite a bit of pink running through them. So as an accent, and so that all the violets don't look the same, I decided to include that colouring into my overall colour scheme. And I also have some violets that are in those colours as well in my backyard. Now, for the overall design, this is a quick sketch that I've drawn out, which you can download from the website. And the really dark parts, or the outline parts in black pen, are the parts that you're actually going to do the ribbon embroidery for. If you have a look closer into the background, you can see there's some pencil sketch with a bit of sort of coloured scribble. And that's going to be the background washes that I'm going to be showing you how to paint in this tutorial. Now, when you're doing any of the background work for silk ribbon embroidery, you don't want to really be painting all of the detail of these flowers. And the main reason for that is the background that you're working with is purely just for suggestion and to complement the artwork. It's not supposed to be an artwork on its own and then you're putting silk ribbon embroidery on top, if that makes any sense. So the design is for using single violets. You could do double violets if you wanted to, and you can see that I've got a sort of 2.5 leaves. I've also got a shadowy leaf in the background. A lot of the colours that are filtering out here, I don't know whether you can see that too clearly, but they're sort of bluey pinks in that area. And again, the bluey pinks with the darker purples towards the middle in that place there. So let's get started on the painting. Again, returning to the overall design, you'll need to transfer your design unless you're happy to do it freehand. Usually I just freehand my designs straight onto the fabric, but if you're new to doing this type of work, I'd suggest that you transfer it straight onto the fabric. You could use a grey lead and trace the design through the fabric, but you don't want grey lead lines through your paintwork because it's very difficult to remove. So what I'm actually suggesting to do is using the aquarelle or watercolor pencils to transfer your design through it. So before I actually hooped my muslin, you could use linen or any other sort of fabric. I don't know whether you can see the design. You can see sort of the sketch work there. What I've actually done is held up the fabric to the window, and you can sort of see I'm just trying to hold it up here against the window. You can see how the design comes through the fabric, and you just basically trace over the black lined areas. You don't want to trace over the areas that are for the distance or for the sort of filler areas. These are the areas that I'm talking about, all of this bluey pinky stuff all behind the flowers, all of this stuff. You don't want to trace that out because you're actually going to create that. What you do want to trace is where the main part of your design is going to sit so that we can work all the other stuff around it. these are the brushes that I'm using. You could use a smaller version of this. It's just, this is what I've got out at the moment. It's a wide angled Taklon. It's about a 1 1/4 inch, but you could use one that's about half that width. Like I said, it's just what I've got lying around. I've also got a mop brush, which is a 1/2 inch sable mop brush. I've also got a number 4 round. This one's a sable brush, but you could use just a Taklon acrylic one. This is a 3/8 of an inch angle brush. Again, it's just a Taklon acrylic one. And this is a number 1 script, or a really fine liner if you've got one. The other thing that you need to do is make a paper pad. And what they're used for is soaking up any areas in your paintwork that you don't want spreading or bleeding. It also helps soak up excess amounts of water and color blurring that you want to be able to control. So basically you take a sheet of paper toweling and you fold it up into squares, and that's how you'll actually use the paper pad. The Viva or Handy Ultra, and this isn't any promotional advertising for them, but I find those two brands to be the best for this, because the paper doesn't break up and it holds its shape really well. You can reuse them over and over again. They'll dry out and you could reuse them again if you really wanted to, but the most important thing is that they don't drop any lint into your paintwork, which means you're not going to have flaky bits inside your paintwork, which does tend to look a bit yuck. And you know that the paper's not going to break apart if it's soaking up too much of the liquid while you're painting. I also forgot to explain that the reason why we use the watercolor pencils is so that they will blend into and dissolve into the wet paint and the wetted areas that you've got. If you use a regular coloured pencil like these are just regular Staedtler coloured pencils, which is what I've used for colouring in the design. You won't have them bleed. They won't blend into the paint and they'll just stay there, and you'll have a permanent outline which looks a bit nasty. So I prefer to use aquarelles, and you don't need to buy a huge packet of them in a huge variety of pencils. A 12 pack is more than enough colour range in order to do a variety of different flowers, and because basically all you're doing is just outlining the main flowers that you're working in and some leaf work. Okay, so you can see here before I start mixing any of the paints, you can see the basic outlines, and what we're going to do, if I go back to the colour plate, what I'm actually going to do is very lightly in pale coloured washes, I'm going to actually block in where all of these leaves and violets are going to go, because that's basically where you're going to be placing your silk ribbon work. And I think that's an important part to stick on first, so that you've got the placement, and then you can work out from that background area into filling in all of the shadow work.